I want to thank all of you guys for coming here today. It looks like we've got a really good crowd. Thanks, Beth. My name is Ellen Chambers, and I'm the Executive Director of a new organization called SPEDWatch. I started SPEDWatch to be a civil rights organization to fight for the educational rights of students with disabilities in Massachusetts. I started SPEDWatch because after 10 years of working as a special ed advocate individually, one-on-one with one family at a time, after 10 years of doing that, I just got tired. I got tired of watching school districts breaking the law. I got tired of watching kids developing anxiety disorders because their needs were never met. I got tired of watching school districts punishing kids for behaviors that were clearly a result of frustration, that were clearly a result of their needs not having been met. I got very tired of reading school evaluations that didn't come close to properly evaluating students. I got tired of parents going out and spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on independent evaluations by highly respected and credible experts only to have those evaluations dismissed out of hand. I got tired of going to team meetings where parents were lied to and bullied, sometimes to the point of tears. I don't know if this is ringing true for any of you, but I got tired of parents being forced to accept less than what their child had a legal right to receive, simply because they didn't have hundreds of dollars to spend on an advocate or thousands on an attorney. And I should stop and say one thing now, so I just get this in up front. It's really important for people to understand that this organization is not anti-school. We're not about going out and bashing school districts. We're not on a witch hunt. We have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for the great majority of educators who are out there doing the best they can under pretty tough circumstances. That's not what we're about. We are taking issue with a broken system. Probably the first indicator of how badly things are going for our kids is the MCAS. And I know the MCAS could be a whole nother conversation. It's not perfect, but it is a yardstick that we have. So we might as well use it. And our kids are being expected to pass this yardstick to get a diploma. So we should be using it and talking about it. According to both the state and the federal departments of education, there are, of all of the students with disabilities in the state, roughly 8% have what are called severe cognitive disabilities, the kind of disabilities that would really prevent them from attaining grade level performance. That's just part of the human fabric. That's nature, and we accept that, but it's 8% roughly. So says the Mass Department of Ed, so says the United States Department of Ed. What does that mean? That means that 92% of students with disabilities in Massachusetts are as capable as the general student population of passing MCAS. But when you look at the statewide results, and if you took this sheet that had some numbers up the top of it, this is, what you see here is a comparison, and this is for the whole state. This isn't broken out by any district. This is the whole state. This is the percentage of students who scored in the failed range. And you have, first looking at all students, taking all students together. Those are the percentages that failed in various exams. Now look at the column that pulls out just students with disabilities. Remembering as you read these numbers that 92% of these kids are as capable as their next door neighbor in the all students column. And look at the disparity. It's absolutely atrocious. You know, grade 7 English, 9% of the general population failed, 32% of our kids failed. Just absolutely amazing. Now, these kids are failing because they're not receiving the services they need to be able to learn. It's really that simple. And I know that that's a really hefty claim to make. And when I am speaking with less friendly groups, you know, I always jump in here and say, now I know that's, you know, how can I say such a thing with just a broad brush, you know? Kids are failing because they're not getting services. Well, here's how I can say that. You know, the Department of Education comes out to local school districts every 6 years, and they do a coordinated, what they call a coordinated program review, which is an audit to see how well they are complying with state and federal special ed laws. SPEDWatch went out and we studied the audits of 164 different school districts. Now that's about 40% of all the districts in the state. So if I remember my statistics, that should be a pretty good sampling, 40% of everything that's out there. And this is what we found. Of these 164 school districts, 72% of them don't properly evaluate students with disabilities. So you're dead in the water right there. 71% don't write IEPs correctly. And 79%, almost 80%, don't properly track a student's progress. So for this bucket of 164 schools, 40% of all of the school districts out there in Massachusetts, roughly 3/4 don't properly figure out what the kid needs, don't write a proper ed plan, and don't bother to follow up and see whether the kid is actually making any gains or failing. You know, I find that to be absolutely outrageous. It's just outrageous. I want you to bear with me a minute here because I want to read you just a few excerpts from some of these audit reports just to give you a flavor of how really out of control things can be out there. And these are excerpts from some of these audits that occurred in 2006 or 2005. So this is stuff that's going on now. We don't have anyone here from Douglas, do we? The Douglas School District? Oh, hi. Are you parents?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you want me to skip over Douglas?
No.
Here's what
Share the shame.
Here we go. Well, it's not your fault.
No.
Here we go. In the Douglas Public Schools, now that you just had your audit, your report came out in June of '06. Did you read it?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Just a couple of highlights. In Douglas, in some instances, a person with limited knowledge of reading is the primary diagnostician for determining the reading services a child will get. Also, it's not evident that all team chairs or special education liaisons know what a disability is.
It's true.
Well,
It's horrible.
And several students whose evaluation reports and teacher assessments indicate significant issues and multiple concerns, academically, therapeutically, health-wise, were determined ineligible for special ed. And this is the last one from Douglas, then I'll move on. This is just priceless. Some staff members who provide services to students with IEPs are told that they can't have access to the IEP because of confidentiality reasons. All right, I'll leave Douglas alone now. But June of '06. Adams, Cheshire, way out in the western part of the state. In Adams, Cheshire, March of 2006, just a year ago, staff members incorrectly believe that a school day may be shortened for students with behavior problems. Some special education students now have a shorter day and do not have access to art, music, and other exploratory programs with other students. So there's a whole population of kids that just get sent home halfway through the day. A year ago, less than a year ago, March of '06, Athol Royalston, also out in the western part of the state. This is 2005. This is one of my personal favorites. Listen to this. The facilities at the Ellen Bigelow School, a district school for students grades K through high school, if you can even picture it. Why? Who are primarily behaviorally involved. They got little kindergartners with high schoolers, right? The facilities in this school are insufficient to meet the needs of these students. The facility is inaccessible. It does not provide for the inclusion of these students into the life of the district schools. There is no lunch area, no gymnasium, no playground or library. The students in these programs are almost completely isolated. Just a year ago. Last one, Canton. Blue Hills Regional Vocational High School, 2005. Access to wheelchair-accessible lavatories requires routing through the school library. Hallway doors are not equipped with handles. Now listen to this. This will make you shudder. Students in wheelchairs cannot exit from the 3rd floor during an emergency evacuation when the elevator is not accessible. This is from the Department of Education's reports. So I guess we just hope no kid dies there. You know, I don't know about you guys, but this stuff makes me really, really, really angry. Angry's not actually the word. I would like to use another word, but since I'm being taped, I won't.
Excuse me,
Yes.
can I just ask you a question? In terms of the school, what do they have to do? Do they have to respond to that within a given period of time?
Yes, they have to create, we're going to get to this, but yes, they do. They have to, whenever a school district is found out of compliance in any way, the school district has to propose a corrective action plan to the Department of Education. And then the Department of Education approves it or revises it. And then typically once the corrective action plan is approved, this can be taking 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 months. Never mind, the kids are failing, you know, forget that. 3, 4, 5 months down the road, the coordinated program review, the corrective action plan may be ready. The district is to implement the corrective action plan, and usually the Department of Education will ask for progress reports. So the district is to report to the Mass Department of Ed on what progress they are making with regard to bringing that area into compliance.
But all of the issues are treated similarly. It's like you have the same response time.
Yeah.
There's not like critical issues that would have to be addressed, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the major issues that SPEDWatch has is with the Department of Education's monitoring system. Very frequently, these corrective action plans will say, you have to hold a training on this. Like, you're not writing proper IEPs. You have to have a training on IEPs and send us the attendee list. Well, who is teaching that?
Right.
The person who's in charge of the district that's not writing IEPs correctly. And the Department of Ed very often will simply ask for a written assurance. Write us a letter and promise you won't do it again. And then, when you do that, everybody says, okay, we'll see you in another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, no, I
No
would
way,
end
no
up
one
to-
follows up to see if it's actually
We just were
happening.
and I'm new to this, so I remember when they called me and they said they were gonna do an interview with me.
Yeah.
I'm one of the PAC coaches, I was all excited.
Yeah.
Got in there with all my facts. And when I got in there, they didn't want to know anything about quality of anything.
I know.
Just, are you doing it? Is it being done? And we were so disheartened. I was like, I can't believe it's
I believe the whole system has to be changed. Quite frankly, I don't think the Department of Education should be auditing the Department of Education. But
Good point.
we have a lot of work to do. You know, the only thing that really makes me angrier than all of this is the fact that the state and the federal government has known about this stuff for years and years and years and years, and they have done not one thing about it. I want to share with you a little bit of the history of the federal government's auditing of Massachusetts. Just like the Mass Department of Ed comes out here and does their audits, the federal Department of Education goes out to all of the states, and they look at states as a whole. How is Massachusetts doing complying with the law? How is New Hampshire doing complying with the law? The federal government has cited Massachusetts Department of Education 8 times in the last 16 years for failing to demonstrate that they are ensuring that their local school districts are obeying the law. 8 times in 16 years. It goes like this. We'll go back to 1991. In 1991, I'm going to use the letters OSEP, O-S-E-P. It stands for Office of Special Education Programs. It's the branch of the United States Department of Education that does the auditing in the states. So when I say OSEP, that's what I'm referring to. So in 1991, OSEP comes up here and they say, Massachusetts, you're out of compliance on a whole bunch of things, including you're not making sure that your local school districts are complying with the special ed laws. OSEP says, you guys got to fix it. It better be fixed when we come back. They come back 3 years later. And they find continuing, this is quote, OSEP found continuing deficiencies that were first identified in 1991. Whole list of things. And among them, that Massachusetts is not ensuring that deficiencies are identified in its local school districts and are corrected in a timely manner. And OSEP says to Massachusetts, you guys, we told you to fix this 3 years ago and you didn't. You really have to fix it now. It better be fixed when we come back. They go away, they come back in 2 years, 1997. And what they say now is, quote, we think that Massachusetts has taken some steps to strengthen its procedures for monitoring its local school districts. But these procedures still are not sufficient to meet their state responsibility for general supervision of local school districts. So now 5 years has gone by. Massachusetts is still letting school districts break the law. Federal government says, you know what, we told you about this 5 years ago, you still haven't fixed it. Boy, you gotta fix it, we want it to be fixed when we come back next time. Not a word about the children, how this affects the children. They come back in 3 years. And they do a very comprehensive review of Massachusetts at this point. They really spent a lot of time here, visited a whole bunch of districts. And this is what they said, quote, we are seriously concerned about continuing noncompliance that has not been corrected. These areas include, Massachusetts has an IEP development process that results in delays in services and in children with disabilities not receiving services at all. Children with disabilities are not being educated in the least restrictive environment with non-disabled children. And Massachusetts is not exercising its general supervisory authority to ensure that our local school districts are complying with special ed laws. Okay, and they say that these deficiencies have been allowed to exist For a number of years, it's impacting on services to students with disabilities. OSEP has documented these and continued deficiencies in prior reports. The state must take action to ensure that the above long-standing serious non-compliance is effectively and promptly corrected throughout the state. Okay, so now 10 years has gone by. Massachusetts is still letting school districts break the law. What do you think OSEP does at this point? They just leave. You better have fixed it when we come back. We come back in 3 years. And finally, it looks like maybe we're making some progress here. Okay, so here we go. This is what OSEP says. This is October of 2003. Remember, we started in 1991. We believe that Massachusetts has a system for general supervision that constitutes a reasonable approach to identifying and correcting non-compliance in local school districts. However, we cannot, without also collecting data at the local level, determine whether or not this procedure is fully effective. So it sounds good, but unless we check and really make sure, we don't know. So now this is 13 years have gone by. Massachusetts has at least been able to describe 13 years, this is enough for a whole generation of kids to go through their education, never in compliance with the law. Every year their rights being violated. But Massachusetts has finally been able to describe a procedure that might be reasonable in correcting non-compliance, but the government isn't really sure that it's effective. And what do you think they do? They go back to Washington. Another year, this is coming to an end soon. Another year down the road, November of 2004, OSEP comes back to Massachusetts and they say, Massachusetts, we don't want you to describe your monitoring system to us. We want you to give us data and analysis that proves that the nice procedure you have on paper actually results in local school districts complying with the law. We want to see that when we get back. They come back a year later, September of 2005. And listen to what the Massachusetts Department of Education gives OSEP in response to OSEP's request for specific data and analysis, data gathering, we're all familiar with that, objective information. Massachusetts said to OSEP, well, guys, the monitoring procedures themselves are considered our data. Does that sound like something you'd hear in an IEP meeting? And what do you think OSEP does then? It's not what we asked for. You have to give us data and analysis. We're going back to Washington. We hope to have it next year. So here's the thing, you guys. We're on our own. School districts in Massachusetts are not going to stop breaking the law. If we sit around waiting for the federal government to come along and do something about it, we're all sadly mistaken. They haven't done anything in the last 16 years, and they're not going to do anything in the next 16 years. Our kids are going to continue to suffer, and no one's going to do a damn thing about it. As I said, I've been a special education advocate for 10 years. I also have a child with a disability. And I've been to hundreds of team meetings, and I've read hundreds of IEPs, and I've talked to thousands of parents easily, and it's the same thing over and over again. Year after year after year, kid after kid after kid, disability after disability after disability, district after district after district, it's the same obstacles getting thrown in front of parents. So I see it this way. Either we organize and fight for our kids, and I mean really fight for our kids, or we just let the abuse continue. Those are the two options on the table. And it is abuse to put a child through that level of frustration and anxiety. I know some of you guys have seen that in children. You know, I really do believe that we're looking at the next civil rights movement here. You know, education is a civil right. Children with disabilities are denied that civil right. I mean, there's no need to sugarcoat it because that's what's happening. And just like women organized in the 1920s to get the vote, and just like African Americans in the 40s and 50s and 60s organized to finally end discriminatory treatment, this fight that we have in front of us isn't any different. It is exactly like those fights. In changing the way special education operates in Massachusetts is going to require really nothing short of a full-fledged movement, because we are talking about taking this huge behemoth of a system and moving it 180 degrees in a direction that it doesn't want to go. It's not going to be easy at all. We're not going to be able to finish the job. Perhaps our children will, but we can at least start the job. It's not going to be pretty. You know, people in those other struggles that I alluded to were hurt. They were retaliated against. People were killed. And that's going to happen to us too. We have to be pragmatic about that and realize we're going to be retaliated against too. That's just the price that you pay, though, when you ask society to shift in a way that it doesn't want to. I like to say that when I start to receive retaliation personally, I'll be very happy, because then I'll know we've made a dent. So I'm sorry to say, I haven't had any property damage, I haven't had any harassing phone calls yet, but when I do, anyone who's on the listserv will hear about it. I'll be very excited, because that will mean we've hit the next rung of the ladder. You know, and I say to hell with it, go ahead. Damage my property. Send me harassing phone calls. I don't care anymore. I just can't stand by and let watch my daughter be hurt. I can't watch your kids be hurt any longer. So they can, you know, bring it on, whatever they want to do. I want to finish by talking a little bit about how SPEDWatch is going to operate. Like, what the heck are we actually going to do? First of all, because we're a civil rights movement, our activities are going to occur in that context. You know, so what does that mean? We're using the techniques of nonviolent struggle. That's protesting, that's picketing,